Hello, everyone, and welcome to another in Rallyware's ongoing webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about taking distributor enablement beyond just training. And I'm excited to have with us Adriana Ariga from Beautycounter. But before we begin, let me share a few logistics for this today. I was going to say afternoon because that's where I'm at, but we will be recording this session and all of you will receive a link to the recording later this week. After today's presentation, we will be addressing any specific questions that you might have. So as you think of those, please enter them in the Q&A section of the Zoom, and we will address those when we get to that point in the conversation. So, as I mentioned, we are very excited to have Adriana with us today. She has more than 15 years. You must have started when you were about 12 years old, Adriana, of experience in direct selling and
the comedy show.
So her professional journey, though, has come across before Beautycounter companies like Avon and companies like, Adriana, help me out here, La Prairie.
La Prairie, yeah.
Out of Switzerland. I was not familiar with them until I did some background work on you. And so your role has been leading education initiatives for both their advocate at Beautycounter and their customer communities. So we're going to talk about some of the things they have done, some of the things they are thinking about doing. But then again, thanks for being with us today, Adriana.
Of course, I'm super excited to be here. I love it.
So I always tell folks in the audience, I always tell the presenters to share with me some funny tidbits. And I didn't even have to ask Adriana because in one of our prior conversations, she had just gotten done with spring break with her family. One of the activities they did was to pick out a Broadway show. And when they picked out a show, they picked out Lion King. And of course, her young son sort of rolled his eyes as they were going to go to that. And I shared the same thing with Adriana. That happened in our family. But then the problem is, once he came out of Lion King, Adriana's son, and once we came out of Lion King, all the people who didn't want to go were like singing the songs, humming the tunes, talking about how great it was. So I can relate to that. It is a fantastic show. So for any of you out there who get a chance to see Lion King on Broadway or anywhere else, please don't hesitate. That's my commercial announcement. So let me set a little bit of a backdrop here for our conversation today. I just got back from Direct Selling University. Stuart was up on stage giving the state of the industry. And as you all know, about 40% of companies in direct selling over last year actually achieved any growth. And if you're talking COVID over the last 4 years or post-COVID, it's about that same number, right? So the majority of direct selling companies are not growing today. In fact, one of the conversations I had just recently with them, it's sort of flat is the new growth pattern or the new normal, right? So all of us are dealing with this, handling that, and that's the situation we find ourselves in today. And as we set the context for this conversation today, a lot of direct selling companies, most of direct selling companies have some kind of learning tools in place, whether that's for training itself, onboarding, leadership development, whatever that might be. But those solutions, training for training's sake, that's what we're going to address today, how those don't work. And what are some of the things that you should think about as we drive performance, as we take that training or that information and actually help drive the bottom line of the business. So how can we take that to the next level? That's where our conversation's going today. So Adriana, how long have you been with Beautycounter? I haven't even looked at that.
Do you know, I've only been there, I would say this is my second year, going into my second year. So relatively fresh.
You've been with multiple companies
Yeah.
since the pandemic and the changes that it sort of imposed
Yeah.
upon the industry? What have you seen in the direct selling business change over those last 4 years since the pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone has that shared experience that we all saw a high during the pandemic. Everyone was at home. Everyone had the time to get on the Zoom. Zoom became like a thing, and social media and all of that kind of created that normalcy in people's world. So I think that digital, like that influx, like digital was obviously already huge, but I think that influx of time and attention that people were given during that time allowed direct selling companies to see this huge overinflation. And now, I think we all are in this slump. We're all in this like, wait, what just happened? We were all kind of like riding this high. And I think the reality is, much like people that are on the corporate side of direct selling, or on the distributor side, we've all come to this point of, what worked before did not work, it does not work now. Whether it's during pandemic, pre-pandemic, we are truly in a new world where people interact with, call it what it is, interact with content. I mean, we talk about education, but the reality is, the way I see education is, it's nothing but content. And so how do I create and develop and serve up content education in a way that now definitely does need to lean into the more social media. Oh, was that just me?
I don't know if it was you or me, but that's why I turned
We're
off my
back.
video.
But we're
And
back.
apologize to the audience. Wherever that ended with you, I happen to be in a hotel room, so my internet connectivity seems a little bit unreliable today. So we'll see where we
That's
go from here.
okay. That's
So
okay.
thank you for whatever the audience heard of you, and hopefully it was all you, and I was just the one who was on pause. But what I really liked about that thread was that word content. And I think we're going to focus on that today, that delivery of the content. Let's forget training. Let's forget education. Let's
Right.
talk about the right information to the right person at the right time. So one other question that I want to ask you, you were with two companies during what we were talking about, that 4 years.
Yeah.
Were there any differences? Were there any benefits, advantages, disadvantages between the two with what that pandemic either imposed upon you or allowed you to do differently, I guess?
I mean, I think while the two companies are extremely different, in terms of just approach, audience, portfolio, all of it, heritage, so different. However, I think that there was a very commonality in the fact that whether you are, whether a distributor, an advocate, a representative is interested in this company or that, or this product or that product, or this mission or not, the end of the day, the commonality lies in the fact that we all are dealing with a volunteer sales force. And I think that that's so important for direct selling companies to really embrace and use as the forefront of their philosophies, of their strategies, because I think oftentimes direct selling companies are in this kind of identity crisis where it's like, you don't want, just like, and we impose that onto our distributors by being like, there's almost like a shame to it. And so I think that there was a commonality between the two companies where you are dealing with someone that is living a normal life. This is not their full-time job, very small percentage of them this is. And so you are just one small peg in a schedule, in an agenda, in a to-do list of millions of other things. So you're competing. And so I think that while they are so different, I think there is just a general commonality where you at the end of the day, no matter how great your products are, great your mission is, great your price points are, whatever, how new you are, how old you are, that you are at the end of the day in direct competition with their normal life. And so I think our job is to create the storyline, create the content, create the how to run your business, all of these things in a way that is enjoyable. And I know people throw around the world like word, oh, you need to make it fun, but you need to make it fun. You need to make it quick. And you need to really lessen the amount of steps it takes from your training to the actual activity. And so that to me has been the huge learning and the reality check of these are normal people. So if my goal through education, through enablement is to help them succeed in whatever that looks like for them, then I need to make it easier. So I can't have this grandiose idea of like, this is going to be an amazing training and I'm going to teach them all this stuff. Like, get to the point, tell me what I need to do, because that is something that time and time again with our trainings across my experience, that when we get the feedback, when we talk to the actual representatives or the advocates, they're like, that was so great, but what do I do now? And that was the common thread, that was the common narrative that I kept hearing, and I thought, okay, we need to get off our high horses. We need to get off like, we're corporate, we know what's best, we know the strategy, you know, all that thing. And like, how do you just normalize and just create a lot more streamlined, simplified way to do this business in these kind of just like, do this. Because at the end of the day, do they really want to learn? Do you really have time to get on at 8 p.m.? Probably not. And you don't want to make it feel like it's like that struggle. You want to make it feel like, oh, I could do that. So that's my goal, is to make someone feel like, oh, I could do that. I could say that.
Man, I will tell you that a couple of golden nuggets in there with what you just shared. And so the people we have monitoring this from corporate, it might have been your internet instead of mine. So I turned my video back on. So, hey, we have a great audience out there today. And if any of you are from beginning, starting, thinking about a direct selling company, what Adriana just shared about that volunteer workforce, if you remember nothing else from this today, remember that. You're lucky if they give you a couple minutes, a couple hours, whatever in the day. So then two of the other things she said was enjoyable and simple, right? So we always call it, delivering that information they need in those in-between moments of the day. I'm sitting there waiting for Johnny after soccer practice, right? I can still do my business. I'm waiting for my doctor's appointment. I can, in those in-between moments of the day, time scraping. How can we help them do their business that's specific to them in a short amount of time as possible? So exactly what you said, right? Delivering that content proactively. And in fact, it's not like taking them down a pathway, a journey, a whatever, because they're not going to do that for the most out there, right?
It's so
So
true.
know that Beautycounter had, before you got there, a what I'll call a traditional LMS, traditional learning management system, that they were not satisfied with, that they were looking to replace with something more powerful, beneficial, attractive to their advocates. So that's when they brought Rallyware on. Talk to me about, again, why that traditional LMS doesn't work. Maybe not so much so as what are those elements in delivery of content that you are trying to focus upon strategically as you continue to look at the business and what you are trying to affect in the business.
And so in full transparency, I also worked with Rallyware coincidentally at my old company as well. So I'm very familiar with the platform, the ins and outs, what works, what doesn't. And what I have found, so I say that because, yes, my current company just maybe went into Rallyware, whatever, a few years ago, but I've had experience with representatives, consultants, distributors who have been in this system. And what's so great is that, number one, they are able to get all of their content in one place. But what I found through the years, and through just seeing the data, because to me, the data leads me, like, education training can be kind of, very colorful and, pretty and scripted. But at the end of the day, to me, what's driving that ROI? What is the engagement in the tool? And what I found, which was interesting, the shift. So if you are all familiar with the Rallyware platform, are the programs and the tasks. Those are the lessons, the kind of digital e-learning lessons where I want to learn about how to recruit. And I click on the lesson and I see kind of almost blog style, what is the content? And at HQ, we're developing that content. We define what they need to know. There's also a resource library section, which is like a very clean, organized, call it folders of content. And through the years, I saw a distinct, and maybe pandemic was around, but like there was a distinct transition from, I'm taking these lessons, I want to go in there independently, learn about something, or maybe I was prompted by an email, or we have an offer going on, so corporate is telling you to take this lesson. But I saw a very clear transition to taking these independent lessons, which you said it, learning for learning's sake, to really being more self-reliant, and I guess whatever their individual need was, they were able to more directly gather that information, get the answer to what they wanted through that resource library with all the content that we were developing in there. Call it a one-pager, call it infographics, training guides, whatever it is, scripts, presentation slides. We found that people were wanting to navigate it more on their own terms. And so they were definitely leaning more into the resource library. And so it kind of started us thinking, it started shifting my mind around education of, I may kind of say this is the curriculum, this is the best practice of what you need to learn. But again, at the end of the day, when someone just has that few moments in between, or maybe it just strikes them that they're like, oh, I need to be focusing on my business, or there was a new launch, now I'm interested. They need to be able to navigate and get that content on their own. And so I found myself developing more and more content in this world, videos as well, into this more self-navigated yet highly organized section of Rallyware. So I found myself transitioning from kind of us telling them what they need to learn to, okay, let me just make sure that they have the content they need, can easily find it, and they can access it for whatever reason, not what I'm telling them they need to learn right now.
So that's perfect. I usually tell people when they're looking at, and we're going to get away from the learning platform, educational platform, right? A
Okay.
performance enablement platform. As you said, content to drive behavior. I tell people to think about that on 3 levels, right? The top level is exactly how you began. You at corporate are prescribing that journey, that pathway, those breadcrumbs down the path to success for them because of what you have seen over, your history in direct selling, what the company wants to do, that kind of thing. The second level is what you just described on choose my own adventure. It might be something somebody saw me at Starbucks, asked me about this product. I don't really remember, and I have to go, or some way I want to take my business in a different direction, and I come up with that idea. The third, and probably even more powerful as you get there, is the ability for that performance enablement platform to look at the data, to look at the information, and based upon that, proactively tap me on the shoulder and help me down that path, right? So one of our customers right now, I sign up with them. They have created multiple personas that I might fit into as I interact with the business, right? So I sign up, I say, I love your product. I only want to know about product. Leave me alone. I don't want to build a business. I don't want to sell to anybody else. I just want the discount. The platform takes me down that path, and it continues to give me information on product. In this case, maybe recipes that I can use with those products. But then the platform sees all of a sudden, 6 weeks later, taps me on the shoulder and says, hey, Rich, I know you said you're interested in product, but you had 2 people sign up underneath you. If you get a third, you could become a senior. And now all of a sudden, I might think about building a business because of what that data told the platform, and then the platform proactively contacts me. And I think that's what you're beginning to look at today from our conversations, is what that data can proactively tap your advocates on the shoulder to help them, regardless of what you've prescribed, regardless of what they think they want, what actually is happening in their business.
Yeah, and I think 100%. And so I appreciate our partnership because we can have these kind of thought partnering conversations around where to go next and kind of thinking outside the box and being innovative about it. And I think that you totally hit it in terms of how do we use the data of their own personal business to serve them up the right content at the right time. And the other piece for me is also like, how do we continue to give them those little wins, whatever it is, and it's creating that consistent activity and behavior that feels like, oh, this is easy enough. And oh, I did get someone that signed up on, how did that happen? You know, and not in a passive way, but kind of start to build the muscle of like, just do little things, because everyone knows that's the biggest thing about this industry is like, it's too hard. I say it all the time. I say it all the time of like, I could never do what they do because it feels daunting. And so how do we lean into different technologies and ideas and be innovative to think, okay, what do they really need? And how do we, support those little activities and behaviors? So I think you said it right, like tapping someone on the shoulder, or like, try this or do this, versus like it all,
So those small wins, you are right. It's going to go back to that thread of conversation you had earlier about this being a volunteer workforce.
Yeah.
I said the same thing when I was at Pampered Chef, right? I would tell the people who reported to me, it's a lonely business out there. Like you said, I could never do that. Think about it. You go out, and in those days they were having shows, right? You have a show, it's a $1,200 show, you're excited, you come home, you're celebrating. The next night you go out, 2 people show up. You have $37 in sales. And if you weren't dejected enough, you walk in the door and your significant other says, I told you should have never invested in that. I mean, think about that. At least if you and I are in corporate, and this is not so true anymore, I have a bad day, I'm going to plop down in your office and go, you would not believe it's lonely out there. And that's another thing we've got to remember. Forget about the content, forget about helping them with their business. How can we engage with them to make them feel cared for, but feel a part of that bigger whole too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think oddly, direct sales in general has always kind of stayed in this antiquated approach. And for some reason, even corporate companies who are trying to innovate, trying to do things different, there is this hesitation. There is this to kind of like really shift towards like it's so stuck on like it has to be in person. It has, and obviously the magic happens when I'm talking to someone and I'm engaging. But how do we start to kind of omni-channel our approach, bring in more technology, and really think like, how do we just make this thing normal for people? Like everyone is living on an app, everyone is getting notifications on the phone. So like, how do we create this experience to mirror what is just normal life for everybody outside of like to me, my company, this industry can't be like the outlier that is like the only one that's not doing just things that have now for a long time have, like my own mother, has apps, is doing, I mean, there's a lot of things she will not bank online, but it's like she definitely texts me and sends emoji, it's like, so there's things that are now very normal that I think we should just tap into, and I don't know, and not be so hesitant to just try it,
You know
So,
what, though? You are sitting, at least from my perspective, from the outside looking in, at a company today, Beautycounter, that I will applaud for the things they have tried historically, right? Being
yeah,
on the app in a retail store, being, those kind of approaches, you don't know what's going to work, and you've got to be willing to iterate as you move forward, right? And that's the other thing about getting a platform. You've got to be able to make those changes, because right now I know you guys are thinking about focusing on a small group, trying this out with them, seeing if it works with them, maybe comparing them to another group that you haven't touched in the same way. I mean, that's a big part of just what you said, that ability to try to figure out what's going to actually work in this industry, right?
that's right. I think sometimes making changes, especially in the technology space, um, can feel daunting, can feel like, well, what if it doesn't work? And so that's kind of the innovative spirit of Beautycounter, where it's like, let's test and learn. Let's try it. Let's not be scared of being disruptive, and let's not be scared of failing, because this is just a journey. And so, while there is buy-in, right? Like at any corporate, organization, if you are trying to bring in something new, it's not like everyone's like, yes, sure. And so it's so important that, to me, in my role, I continue to put the sales force, our advocates, at the forefront and as my priority, to continue to fight for them, to not have to have them have this. If I see that they're having a hard experience, a bad experience, an experience that's not showing them success, it is incumbent on me to continue to bring the data, to continue to, I mean, you saw, I've had so many demos, internally, because to me, that is our role. Like anybody that is in any senior, any leadership role in an organization, that to really, whoever is your end consumer, to continue to put their experience and their happiness and their just contentment as your priority, and always let that be your North Star, if you will. And so I think that's why it's we're slowly looking at how do we incorporate to-dos, something that's like a little bit more like it directly links the training, the how, to the activity. And at the end of the day, that is, I may have education or learning and development in my title, but my role is to enable them. My role is to, whatever it needs to be, to get our sales force to a place where they are like, I'm glad I made this decision. I can do this, and give them that confidence. They are running their own businesses. Like they are little mini entrepreneur, not even, some of them are major entrepreneurs. And it's like, that is our role, not only from a portfolio perspective, we have great products and launches and storyline and branding and all that, but it's like the experience every day is, to me, I don't even, it doesn't keep me up at night. It's my passion, it's my like, and so I find myself oftentimes working with leaders, even new consultants in the field, whoever they are, it doesn't matter what level, and like really understanding their experience. So as you and I have these conversations, as we're looking at how do we switch the strategy for education or sales or whatnot, that I know on the everyday basis what is the experience, and that may sound basic, but I think we forget about that because all these decisions we make here, on our Zoom meetings and whatever, oftentimes it doesn't even make sense in real life, and so I'm always like, what does this look like in real life? Like, I'm just a normal person. I'm just a mom. I'm trying to, have my 9 to 5, have my dog, have my son. And it's like, would I do that? And majority of the things I'm like, nope, no, I wouldn't, and so would I understand that? Nope. And so it's like, how do you continue to put that lens, that experience as your kind of guiding, the thing that guides you?
So I'm going to go back to one of the points you just made and remind me, I need to send you a white paper. Anybody who's on this call wants this white paper, just email rich@rallyware.com. But you talked about giving them that piece of content, information, whatever, at exactly the right moment to do that business activity, whatever that is. We did a white paper where we very distinctly delivered learning for learning's sake. And I think the increase we saw in their business was 8%. And then when you did that attached to something I should do, you just talked about to-dos, that went up from 8% to 14%. And then the huge jump happened when I did that information to do with the business activity at exactly the right moment in time, or got it too close to that, it jumped above 30% increase in what they're doing. So, I mean, it was a great white paper and how we took each of those elements and combined them together. So it would be interesting. Anybody who wants that, don't hesitate.
Totally.
You are talking about trying to drive behavior. What are I always tell people, at least with Rallyware or with a performance enablement platform, the easiest place to show ROI is in that onboarding, right? Bring a brand new advocate through the door, whatever. So tell us, are there objectives or strategies in this year of 2024 that you are going to focus on onboarding, or you're going to focus on leadership development, or one of our companies right now, they have a fast start program, right? It's 90 days long. They're going to focus on day 91 to 180 is one of this year. Do you have any specific group or business activity that is involved in your strategies this year? And I know that's off our pre-canned questions, but
well, the people we're really focusing on, or the segments we're really focusing on, is, yes, those new. I mean, I think everyone sees that at any company, at any directs any industry, that if someone has a good start to their experience or their job, they will be with you a lot longer, and so I think there's like the basics of that. And so we have always kind of focused on the first 90 days, sure, and we will continue to support through the first 90 days. However, we have now really laser focused on those first 7 days. And if anything, the first 2 weeks, where we have seen a lot of strong data that, and I, again, would argue it's similar in my other experiences, of that it really is in that first week, 2 weeks, 10 days, but really in that first week where it's like your make or break, and not only the experience, but how do we get them into quicker activity, not only for our own ROI and sales and whatnot, but it is if you can get someone to place an order in that first few days, and we all know this, but like that is, we are even simplifying for ourselves. Like, the thing is, if the data shows you this is that key time, then that's what we need to do. Sometimes it becomes so overwhelming, like update the onboarding experience and your enrollment journey. And it's like 90 days. Oh, and so it's like, but it's like, how do we not only just laser focus on those 7 days, but create a communications journey, create a promotional journey, create a training journey that is all closely tied, and just quick little like, hey, it's, welcome. All you need to do is this. So before it was, here are 10 things you need to do to get started. And we all have like all the things, but it's like you have to force yourself to be like, just give them one. Stop being crazy, just give them one thing. And so we've really focused on that, but also I think we are living in, so when we're talking about post-pandemic, as an industry, I do think we're living in a world where we are just not seeing the consumers' new customer acquisition like we did before. And so how are we supporting our field to, sure, service and follow up with your current customers and keep that energy going, but how do you really get back to basics and get out there and talk to new people about what you're doing or the new product or your mission or whatever is your storyline? We have definitely refocused a lot of our strategy on this kind of concept of back to basics, because a lot of our field and talking to, again, across all segments, they're like, I kind of forgot how to sell. Like I kind of like, you, especially at a company like Beautycounter, where it's like, it's relatively newer, 10 years, 11 years now, in the worlds of like the Avons and the Mary Kays, where, a lot longer heritage, but, there's definitely a high at the beginning. And now it's like, wait, I have to get back used to doing those basic fundamental things. So we're really shifting not only from like the new and bring in new, but like, how do we start to normalize again the narrative, those basic everyday, like, this is what I need to keep doing, the boring stuff over and over again. And so we've started even something like, I mean, it's not novel, but we've started a new podcast specifically for our advocates, that they're like 20 minutes each on various topics, very conversational, like what you and me are doing. And so I'm driving, I just dropped my son off at school. I throw on the podcast and I listen to it. So not necessarily with the goal of, I'm going to teach you something strong and you're going to walk away and do it. Sure, that's what I want. But I want you to start to more consistently hear our tone, hear the little talking points that now you feel becomes more part of your everyday, that I can just, like, that was something cool I heard. Like, I can say that. Like, I can say that, whatever, retinol, whatever, you want to talk about, but just doing it in a way that's more conversational, less talking at people. It's moved from like that expert level to a more like conversational and just, normal. Like, it doesn't have to be so, yeah, expert. So we've
So
shifted in that way too.
like what we're doing here today, right?
That's right. That's right.
Hey, so I want to take, like the 7 to 14 days, you're laser focused on that time. So when we get back to our to-dos conversation later, we're gonna, because I was just with a company the other day and we were talking about what they do at the beginning. And so it's the same thing, right? I'm gonna do this at day 3 or day 7 or whatever, but we're gonna force you to look at the data, right? And if Rich does something on day 3, that may take
Yep.
a different pathway than if Rich doesn't do something by day 7. So that's the kind of concept we want to think about. What data can we look at, or what business activity can we identify, and then help them either by reinforcing that or by trying to get them to do that. Let me ask you this. So we're talking all about affecting the performance of that individual advocate. Do you guys give thought to how you can help that advocate by going to that? And I don't know, if it would be their immediate recruiter, their upline director, whatever that. So do you bring that into your thought process on how we can help coach and mentor that individual by helping proactively tap their upline leader on the shoulder?
Yeah, yeah. You know, I pause because I think it's kind of like it's a constant internal, like, who do I focus on? The new consultant, the new advocate, or do I focus on the mentor? And I feel like it continues to like pendulum shift, and like there's no right answer to that. In my opinion, though, I think, yeah, in some sense we support the leader, mentor them, train them on how to become a better leader. But at the end of the day, I think, again, numbers wise, I have more opportunity with the masses, the lower levels, who have come in, who are still trying to figure this out, versus someone who may have been here multiple years or is at a higher level. Maybe they're kind of out of it. Are they a good leader? Do they care to be a good leader? And so while there's no right answer, because both needs to be supported, when resources are so low, when time is so low, both for everyone, to me, I want to focus on the masses, where a small win, even like a 1% gain, and that's going to have tremendous impact on, and that I can, more scale versus looking, prioritizing, and, it's probably not the right thing for me to say, but you have to do both.
Yeah,
You have to
but
do both.
it is, if you can get the bigger mass to move 1 inch instead
Yeah.
of leadership to move a foot,
Yeah.
we're going to get more benefit. But when we get back to that to-do conversation, I will challenge you that we should at least have those automatically be on right person, right place, right
That's
time.
right. That's
Um,
right.
so I will say we're winding down to our time together. And one of the earlier comments you made was about getting buy-in. So the last sort of thread of conversation I'd like to have with you is, how do you get that buy-in? I know we're going to try some things new with a small group, whatever. Are you going to ask them questions? Are you going to go to them? How do you get input from your field, if you will?
Oh, um, and I would say, if anything, at Beautycounter, I have even more direct connection and input, formal, informal. We really do, um, we really do prioritize and elevate their voices to truly sit at the table, because I think that time and time again, and hopefully we're quick learners in that, you come in, you start a company, you have an idea, and then it's like, then you have this sales force who's actually executing those strategies, executing those ideas. And so if I don't have 3, 4, 5 conversations a week with groups of brand advocates, individual, it's a constant thread of conversation that definitely defines and is weaved throughout every decision we make, even through the process of, it may be just, it's not even like at the beginning where it's like you want to get ideas on a new strategy, or at the end where you want to get the feedback. It is truly throughout the process. I mean, who we talked about, who the dog wagging the tail, or what, I don't know that analogy,
You
but
always have to, right?
what's that?
You always have to be careful about that
Yes.
tail
Um,
wag dog.
but I do think that, to me, um, I, they're the ones doing it, and so very much they know what works and what doesn't. So it's very important that we are, from a headquarter perspective, we are equipped with the data, and we know the facts, because we know anecdotally many leaders are going to be like, that was great, or that was horrible, but it's like, well, no, it actually worked, or it didn't work, and so I think it's important to have that, but we are constantly asking them to come to the table. And I think that that is what has allowed us to continue to think outside the box, challenge our own thinking and experiences, and kind of better marry strategy with, real life, bottom line. And so that's something that, even from a organizational perspective, marketing versus sales, I think if we continue to blend those two together, and then with the actual Salesforce field, it just, it just becomes a lot more tighter, get to the point, like actually get something to work. And you get that buy-in, because a lot of these ideas that we may have, or things that we may put out, you need leadership, sales leadership, to buy in, to speak to their teams and say, this is amazing. Like, versus them already being like, well, I told, their voice has a huge impact on the success or the failure of the things that you put out, whether it's a new product, it's a new idea, it's a new technology platform, all of that. You must have that buy-in, because it's really reliant on their getting behind anything you do in this industry. That's the bottom
That's
line.
that's another golden nugget, folks out there. We've got a new customer. Before they launched to the field, they brought in top level leaders, I shouldn't say top level, a whole consortium of individuals from the field. And that group, then they did the presentation from stage. They did the ones that, this is going to be, if you can get that, that is like nirvana in direct selling, because they will listen to that. So thank you for all this conversation. We've got a couple questions I'd like to address. The first one is this whole build versus buy thing. Thank you for that question. Contact Rich at Rallyware.com directly, and we'll get that one answered. But one of the other things is adoption, right? How do you make sure your advocates are actually using the system? How do you increase that? Thoughts around adoption, because here again, I think Rallyware just put out a blog this last week, your technology is only as good as the people using it, right? If they use it, I should say.
It's true. And I mean, not to reiterate what I said, I think the buy-in from top leaders, or even influential leaders, is huge. And that's why even strategically, we may bring along, help have certain groups be a part of the development process, to ensure that once we launch, that we do have advocates, meaning truly advocates for whatever we have in terms of adoption. I think communication is also key. The more that you can amplify and continue to elevate, highlight, and show use case scenarios of, like, you're always talking about it, you can't launch and abandon, you keep bringing it up, and then start to really socialize the wins you have. Now you start really having people from the field give their testimonials, do little trainings on how they used it or what they've been able to accomplish, how they've been able to find little hacks in it, like all these kind of fun, different things when you actually put something out into the field to be used. Being able to socialize and continue to tell that story, I think, is what's key. And that's in anything we do. It's like, how do we continue to tell that story around a product, around the technology, whatever, like, what are those real life stories that people, I think that's what sells someone. Just like our products, it's that word of mouth, all that, but that's what we need to.
And I would give advice from the Rallyware side of the house is a lot of people look at that adoption initially and then don't pay it much attention. That's a continuous process, right? And something you should address as you go on. And last thing for our last few minutes together, somebody out there says, okay, I've got a traditional learning platform, right? How do I start the transition off of that or using that to be more effective in what you're talking about, enabling your field out there? What would your suggestion be to that individual?
I mean, I think, so so my example of the using kind of the shift from the traditional learning of the tasks, if you will, in our training platform to the more self-serve experience. We even went as far as, so you access the Rallyware platform from our Beautycounter app. So the advocate, it's a single sign-on, seamless experience. They go to their back-end Office app and they can get to the Rallyware platform. We even shifted because we learned from the data that instead of going to the traditional homepage, we shifted our back end where I'm not a tech person. So once I hit Counter U, like it didn't take me to the traditional homepage. It took me to that library. And while maybe visually the experience wasn't as, whatever, we continued to hear, the engagement went up, and we continued to hear like, oh, I didn't know all this was here, and like, oh, now I can find it. So we made it easier. We intentionally made it easier on our end of, yeah, we kind of looked at it in a different way. We didn't go the traditional route of the homepage, and like that worked for a while, but then we shifted. And it may not have been how it was designed, but once you see the data, once you see how people better access your content, you have to shift. Like you have to make it easier and not fight against that wave, not fight against that, that movement. You need to go with it. And then that's only going to increase, your engagement. And we've seen it. We've seen it.
That's perfect. Well, Adriana, thank you again so much for sharing your time with us, sharing your experience with us, and for being a Rallyware customer. We love you. But that's, what you just ended with. It's all about the data, right? It's what does that tell you? And that can make the changes in your business regardless of the technology that you are using today. So thanks again. I'm looking forward to soon and talking about that new project you've got to kick off. So have a great day, everyone. And I look forward to speaking with you, having you hear important information from the experts in our next Rallyware webinar. So remember, you will receive a copy of this recording, and we hope you enjoy it. We hope you share it with people across your organization. Thanks so much again, Adriana.
Thank you all.
All righty.
Bye.
Bye-bye.